Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business and Learning Show. Welcome to another awesome episode. As you could tell, I'm flying solo a little bit this week. Elena is in the process of moving. I don't envy her at all. So I'm running the whole shebang tonight. Of course, I'll have my very special guest, Tishia Lee, on in just a minute. But for those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome. So happy that you're here. Now, this show highlights tips and tricks that entrepreneurs can use to grow and sustain their business, be more efficient in their business, things like that. So for more information on this episode and to just learn more about myself, Elena, or what we do here at Business and Learning, you can go over to businessandlearning.com. So like I said, thanks so much for joining us live. Now, we are streaming jointly on Facebook and YouTube. So make sure to leave us any comments you may have, any questions for myself or our guest, Tishia, and we'll make sure to get them answered here on the show. So now, for those of you that don't know, Tishia and I have been friends quite the long time. She is one of the original OGs here at Business and Learning back in the Work at Home Expo days and after hours. So we are going to be talking a lot about that, I'm sure. Now, Tishia is a virtual assistant coach and consultant. She takes pride in providing excellent customer service to all of her clients. She's been working with fun, creative women business owners since 2006, helping them behind the scenes with all different types of activities. So now Tishia has over the years discovered the power of finding her own voice as well as her clients. She's beyond being a typical virtual assistant, and she's also the host of a very own podcast, Shining Self. So welcome to the show, Tishia.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited.
Me as I was putting chapstick on.
It's live. It's all good. It's all good. So one of the things I have to say, I'm so excited that you're here. It almost feels like it's coming full circle.
Yes.
I think it's probably 2006, 2007 when we first met in a chat room for Business and Learning. Might have been the Business and Learning chat. Could have been the after hours. Who knows? But our kids, your son and both of my daughters were little people. I'm not going to do math.
I don't want to do the math. I was just going to say, I don't want to do the math. Yeah. It was a long time ago.
But now we're both empty nesters. And that's just, I love it. Just absolutely, absolutely awesome. So just kind of tell us, how are you? What you've been up to? That kind of thing.
Well, the whole question, how are you? That could be a rabbit trail in itself. I'm not even going to say the word that I'm pretty sure we've all come to hate. But despite that and what's going on around us, I'm doing really well. I've worked from home since 2006. So once all this craziness started, my life didn't really change because, like I said, I've already worked at home. What else was I supposed to tell you?
I was just asking how you were doing. Okay, so you've been a virtual assistant for many years.
Yes.
How did you get your start doing that?
Great question, Tammy. So I was a single mom. My son is now 21, so this was many, many moons ago. I believe he was in kindergarten when like this whole virtual assistant thing came about, but I met a gal offline, Kelly McCausey, who my son and I actually moved in with her and her son. She was also a single mom. And about the time that we had moved in with her, she had started getting into like the whole work at home mom community and that whole, I'm sure you remember the whole work at home mom community.
Yes.
Again, many moons ago. But I was working, continuously going from kind of like one dead end job to another. They were quote unquote good jobs, as in like office manager and then an optometrist assistant at Walmart. So it's not like they were, I don't know, like bad jobs. They were just dead end jobs. There was a maximum pay you could reach. There wasn't really any room for growth. And I was struggling really bad. And my hours had been cut from full time, which I was already struggling at full time hours. And they cut my hours from full time to part time. So Kelly approached me about being her virtual assistant. And I was like, what the heck is a virtual assistant? I mean, I had never even heard that word. So Kelly literally took me under her wing and started teaching me some things that I could do for her and in her business. And then, she ended up leaving her full-time job and going full-time with her online business. And then she pretty much let me loose to the work at home mom community. She introduced me to other people. And oh my gosh, so in the beginning, I was literally working for $8 an hour, and intuitive because, when I was optometrist, I was doing 10 something an hour. But the whole reasoning behind that was because I wanted the experience so I could build my VA portfolio. So people were willing to pay me that $8 an hour to train me to do things that they needed to do. And then from there, obviously, the pay went up a lot over the
Yes. And I think so many people who get into the virtual assistant work at home world, they start off at that low rate, and then they kind of, get that experience, and they start working for more clients, and then they can kind of go up the ladder, so to speak. So that's awesome that you had someone like Kelly, and we love Kelly. Kelly's awesome. I think we've all been affected or influenced and inspired by Kelly in some way. I mean, even Business and Learning had something to do with Kelly McCausey. So thanks, Kel. So you started off as a virtual assistant. How did you take that experience that you had and transition that into more of a coach and consultant and just a true business owner?
Another great question. So one of the things that I always said back in the beginning was, oh, being a virtual assistant is perfect for me. I want to be behind the scenes. I don't want to be in front of the camera, or I don't want to be in the public eye, so to speak, which is so crazy because hello, I like being in front of the camera. I like talking.
But and that's why we're friends.
Right? So yeah, the whole, not wanting to be in front of the camera. Hello. That's why I do plus size modeling, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So it was more of as I started to, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to put this into a complete sentence thought. A lot of everything that has happened and how I have grown in my business and transitioned into more of what I'm doing, it all starts with inner work. So when I first started my virtual assistant business, I was a hot freaking mess. Oh God. I mean, Tammy, you remember me from back in those days.
Yeah.
I was a mess. And I can joke about it now because I've done so much work and changed so much. But the more I leaned into learning who I was as a person and stepping into my authentic voice and, finding that voice and being willing to step out, quote unquote, in front of the camera, and wanting to put my voice out there and not just settle for being, behind the scenes anymore, everything just started transitioning. And, I used to work, and I'm not by any means bashing men and the way men run their business. Men are great. I like men.
I do too.
Right? But in the beginning, I was just so willing to just do whatever and work with anybody. It was just, I don't even know how I'm trying to say it. What I'm trying to move into and say is found, who I was a person and found that voice and started stepping into all that role. It gave me the ability to use my voice to let go of a couple clients that they just so happened to be men. But I always didn't want to be working with men. Mm-hmm. And I don't, like I said, I'm not bashing men by any means, how they run their business, nothing. Just, I didn't enjoy working with them. I would try to give them ideas of different things that they could do in their business. They weren't willing to listen to, which, okay, granted, it is business, but I like working with like the women that I work with because they don't necessarily just see me as like a VA. They think of me in terms of like an online business manager, consultant, things like that.
Yeah.
That answered your question, but it really boils down to doing my inner work on myself and just stepping into who I really am as a person.
Right. And men run businesses very differently than women. Yes. I mean, having grown up in my grandfather's grocery store, you know, the way that he did things was very different than even I would do them today. The way that he ran the grocery store, I'd be like, well, you know, you could tweak this, you could do this, you could make this a little bit better. But it's just a very different, and it's just the way that I think men think as opposed to the way women think. You know, but that's awesome for you. And I have to say that the version of you today that I get to see is amazing. It's 360 degrees different. And I loved you then, but I really love who you are now, and that you're confident and just using your authentic voice and being who God made you to be. Just Tishia. You know, that's awesome. So you talked about, you know, we talked about men and maybe things that were a little more challenging, that maybe you just didn't want to work with that type of client. So let's talk a little bit about that. We get a lot of questions about how do I deal with difficult clients? What are some of the tips that you have, or things that maybe you've experienced that you're like, okay, these are some of the tips that maybe you want to look out for?
So my tip for how to deal with difficult clients, fight them. I know that sounds like so simple and silly, but I think back to the time when, I love them, but we were not fit to work as a VA, and her using me as a VA. And I continued over to keep working with her because I was like, I cannot afford to fire her. And it started showing in the work that I was doing for her. I would get an email from her and I would get sick to my stomach. Like I didn't even want to open it. And I knew, at that point, that's really bad. Like if you don't even want to open an email, and so for the longest time, I just dealt with it because I felt like I had to deal with it.
Right.
And so my tip there is you're really holding yourself back by hanging on to, whether you're a virtual assistant or I don't know, whatever else you could be doing, you're really holding yourself back from what is out there that might be a great fit for you by hanging on to something that's not a good fit for you. So, you know, I said the whole just fire a difficult client kind of with some, you know, tongue-in-cheek humor, but I'm really serious because the minute I let that client go, and going back to, you know, the couple men that I worked with that I let go of, as I let go every one of those clients, something better. And I don't mean better as like they were a better person, just a better fit for me and my skills and I excel at. Everything, like the doors just opened to make those other possibilities, you know, available to me and for me to go after those possibilities. So really just holding yourself back. I mean, don't if you're hanging on to something because you think you can't afford to let go of it, I really encourage you, just don't do it. I mean, I spent so long doing that and it just never worked out in my favor or to my benefit.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're looking and you're like dreading emails and dreading text messages and it's just not a very well-rounded type of relationship that you're having with your client or your customer or whatever capacity that they're in, you can go out and find a different client that you're going to be happy to work for, that you do have that, that you like working for, that you like doing things. They excite you, they inspire you, there's just so much synergy coming from that relationship. That you can move on to find a client that you're like, oh my gosh, I love, and they may even pay you more money because, than the other client. So it's worth, investing in that and going, okay, find one to, and if you need to wait maybe to find one to replace that client before you lose that income, that's okay too, but you need to be focusing on what's ahead. So we talked a little bit about your newfound self-confidence. What was that journey like for you? How did you, and share as much as you want. I know it's a very personal journey, so feel free, you don't have to tell us everything. But at what point did you go, I need to make a change. I need to find out who I really am and who I'm meant to be?
That's another really great question, Tammy. I'm a pretty open, I don't have a problem about it. But again, I mentioned already that it's about a lot of, inner work and personal work. I have been running a virtual assistant business that long. I think at this point in time, it was probably 4 years. Yeah, I suck at math, so I'm not even going to try. I'm an alcoholic. I have been sober for a little 6 years. So at the point in my life, everything, I mean, my life was literally falling apart. Family members cut ties with me, but most of them had reached the point that they were done with me. I was losing what's left in my VA business because point I was an everyday drinker. So I was not functioning. I like to think that I was a functioning alcoholic and was still living life and running my business when that wasn't true. Client deadlines weren't being met, projects weren't being completed like they were supposed to be. I wasn't responding to clients for a couple. It was really bad. And it was at that point, well, it was the day after my 37th birthday, actually. I just woke up that morning after another night of blackout drinking and just bawling, knowing that I could not continue the road that I was living because, like I said, my business was falling apart. Just my life around me was crashing. And it was, from that point forward that I made some calls later that day. I went into outpatient therapy for drinking, went into AA meetings. I'd like to say that it was smooth sailing from that point on, and life was great and grand. And I had this overnight, success and change in my life. But yeah, it was not like that.
Right.
That first week I was in AA, but I was still drinking. Then I was in Florida for a week and daily drinking there. And it was on the way back from that Florida that I had this coming to Jesus meeting with myself. I was like, okay, you are literally at a fork road. You go this way and you are I was killing myself how bad the drinking was becoming or had become. Or I take this other road and I get my butt back into the outpatient treatment. I get my butt back to the AA meetings and I really start doing the work on myself. There was so many things that had happened over my life that caused me to drink because I wanted to know things. I didn't want to feel things. So I came back from that trip got back into the outpatient therapy, got back into the AA meetings,
Yeah.
and I started peeling back all those onion layers. That's what they were doing in AA. It's literally like an onion. You peel one layer and then you've got 10 more layers to go. So it was not an overnight change. It was not an overnight success. I kind of ruined your name as a VA to build that trust back up with people. And that's totally understandable. I mean, I was a hot mess. So, the clients that I lost, they obviously did not have good things to say about me. And it's not that he ran my name through the mud, but when you're in a kind of tight community like all are, it's not hard for word to get around.
Right. Right.
So it just, I don't remember where I was going with all this, but the whole change started when my VA business fell apart and I hadn't even been in business long, and just my life was falling through, that changes had to be made.
Right, exactly. And kudos to you that you were able to have that clarity and go, okay, something's got to give. I need to make a change. What is it going to be? There's two paths. What path am I going to take on that? Now, we alluded to this a little bit. You have a podcast, which I was on it. I loved it. I had a great time. Can you tell our audience a little more about your podcast and what you're doing with it and those kinds of things?
Sure. So that kind of into the whole, finding who I was as a person, being into like my authentic voice. And that's part of I stepped into this, I don't want to say like business, but yet it kind of is another business. I have a different website, aside from my virtual assistant website. And that came from that website because, as I shared, I'm the alcoholic. That website came about as I started to step into who I authentically was, as I started to find my voice and stuff. So the podcast came about because I wanted to share stories of hope, transformation with other women, because that's what I'm super passionate about. And I love just, I'm trying to say there, once you do find that your voice and you step into who you are, that's when you start attracting your tribe. So the Your Shining Self podcast is, again, all about sharing stories of hope, love, and transformation. So Tammy, when I had you on, yes, we talk about very personal things. I mean, I have talked about abortion. I have talked about death. I have talked about, alcoholism or being a parent of an addict. So it's very humbling to be able to, I get to share my voice, but more than that, I get to interview the people that have these, amazing stories, and just to be able to help them find their voice to be able to put out into the world. That is, oh my gosh, that's just, I'm so humbled that people trust me enough to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I love the idea of people, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story. And a lot of times, especially for business owners, you can take your story and apply it to your business. What is your why for doing what it is? How did you stumble into this business? The podcast, it definitely is a business. There's many people that is their sole source of income. But I love that you've taken that one step further, and that you're using your voice to share the stories of others. And that's just awesome. I just absolutely love it. And I had a great time. So for those of you that are wondering, what did Tammy talk about? Well, I'm going to tell you. For people that know me and have known me for a few years, the story of Jeffrey. Jeffrey was my fiance back when I was 19 years old, and he was shot and he passed away from his injuries from that. So I believe it's episode 20 on the podcast, I think.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
If I'm wrong, I will post it in the notes from this episode for you guys and link to it so you guys can go back and listen to it if you want to listen to it. So what do you have any kind of guests that are coming up that maybe people might want to tune into or anything like that?
Actually, can I backtrack for 1 second?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Because this falls into the whole finding your voice thing. So the way that the podcast and stuff came about was I actually had owned another like blog business in a completely different niche. And I started running into the problem as I'm, doing all this work on myself, coming into more and more of who I am as a woman, wanting to put myself out there authentically. But this community was, I ran into the problem where as I was putting myself out there authentically, and somebody, after I had a concert with a friend, they had Facebook messaged me, and I was told that I should be ashamed that at this concert because of the type of music that they played, when the concert wasn't even about the music for me, it was about being with a friend and being out having fun.
Right.
So I knew at that point I carried with this business in that niche for a little while longer, again, selling myself out because, well, it is bringing in income, that type of thing. But knowing that if I wanted to really continue to put myself out there as who I really was, that I had to let that go. So as soon as I let that go, that's how the podcast and the other website came about, because I was like, okay, screw it. I am done pretending that I am somebody that I am not, because that's what those people in that community think that I need to be. Because I had lived my entire life being somebody, or, a gazillion somebodies, because I had so many different personas, I guess is the word I'm thinking of, to please everybody else. And I was like, I'm done. No, that is not aligning with what I'm trying to do. So that, like I said, I let that go, and that's how everything else came about.
That's awesome. I absolutely love it. I want everybody to go check out Tishia's podcast, shiningself.com, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, as we do every week on the show, we have a little rapid fire. So got a couple of questions for Ms. Tishia Lee.
Fire away.
All right. So what is your favorite meal at a local restaurant, whether you're where you're living currently or what have you?
That's an easy one. The boyfriend and I just found a taco truck on Sunday. Oh, hands down, my favorite tacos ever.
That sounds like tacos and queso, and I'm there, baby.
Yep.
Okay, I need to schedule a trip to come visit you. Yes. Okay, so next question. Have you read any good books lately? Something that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yes. Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
I've heard about this book.
Oh, it's so good. I literally devoured that book in a weekend, and I am working through it a second time. It has resonated with me so much because it's all about just how for so long I lived my life pleasing everybody else, and finally breaking free from that. Highly, highly recommend this book.
That's awesome. We'll have to check it out. Okay, so you've been a virtual assistant for years. You've worked in the online work at home world for years. What is your best time management hack?
My best time management hack. Let's see. I still struggle with time management. I think for me, it's probably chunking projects together. So if I have, like a couple little projects that I need to do, instead of like doing one, moving on to something else, just block those together and get those done and then move on to something else.
Oh,
So
that's a good idea.
Time blocking.
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned this on the last episode, and one of the things that I started doing is I have my to-do list, which everybody has one, but I also have a results list.
Ooh.
And that way I can actually look, because how many times have you said, what did I do today? I have no idea what I did. Like, what did I actually produce today? Because it feels like I went from this to that, to that, to this. But when I started creating a results list, like I edited this podcast for this client, I edited, I recorded a new intro for this one. I can actually see, oh, yes, I did get things actually accomplished. Look, here's my list. I did 3 things. Yay! Okay, so do you have a favorite phone app? Because there's an app for everything out there.
Yes.
for whether it's business related or just for fun or, anything.
Because I tend to not do anything business related on my phone, I don't really have any business related apps.
Mm-hmm.
I have my phone right here. So there's a couple apps recently. One is called Foodie. It's like a camera app, and I'm having a ton of fun with that. And then the other one is called Insight Timer. It's about meditation, because
I like
with
that.
everything going on lately, my anxiety had gotten pretty bad at the beginning of all this. So that was recommended by a friend. So they have some guided meditations on there. So those are the 2, Foodie and Insight Timer. Those are my 2 favorite right now.
Okay.
But ask me in, like 2 days and I could have like 10 other favorites.
I know. Right now, I'm really into Marco Polo.
Oh, yes. I forgot about that one.
Yeah. My husband introduced me to it last year. Didn't really use it, but Elena and I use it a lot. Especially with her moving from one location to another. And just, just chatting with friends, like it's so much easier just to record a video chat and send it off than to type and worry about autocorrect and, all that kind of stuff. So I am loving Marco Polo. So
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, if you're on Marco Polo, hit me up. I love chatting. I love chatting.
Along that same line, so I actually do have an app on my phone that is kind of business related, because that's generally what I use it for. But have you ever heard of Voxer? Voxer?
I have, yeah.
Voxer is very similar to Marco Polo. It's, you do it's like a walkie-talkie, actually.
Right.
So that, I guess, is a business app that I use, is Voxer.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, Tisha, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been a blast as usual. How can members of our audience get in touch with you or connect with you?
Well, like you already mentioned, they can find the podcast over at shiningself.com. The virtual assistant stuff is found at tishiasavestime.com, and it's spelled TISHIA savestime.com. And thanks, Tammy, for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Unfortunately, everyone, we are about out of time. Thank you so much for joining us on tonight's episode of the Business and Learning Show. We'd like to thank our very special guest, Ms. Tishia Lee, for joining me and kind of being my guest co-host tonight. So we're going to be back next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. That would be May 26th with Dorsey Ilson, and she's going to be talking all about Facebook ads and all that good stuff. So if you ever want to know about Facebook ads and how to be better at it, or just how to do it in general, you're going to want to make sure not to miss that episode. So I want everyone to have a wonderful Memorial weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and wash your hands. Have a good week, y'all.